Welcome back to day 2 of this amazing workshop where we are uncovering ourselves, facing our truths, overcoming our fears, disconnecting from who we thought we used to be, and starting to step into who we want to become. And day 2, the power of altering the ego. If you've made it back for day 2, you found some benefit through day 1, which is understanding our present moment. You found that there must be something there that actually is like, wow, he's not just all positive videos and traveling. He's put together something here. So I appreciate it. Welcome back. And you know what? You should celebrate yourself. Like, celebrate yourself for making it back. Celebrate for yourself that you've come back another day to do the work, to put in the time, and to want more for yourself. That's one thing we don't do, is celebrate ourselves enough. So you should celebrate yourself. Before we get started, I hope you took the time to take in those 3 deep breaths, really clear off the day, really start stepping into this present moment so we can be centered here. We can rinse off the day and we can get into this clear-minded. And if you break up this video, every time you come back, take those 3 deep breaths. Give yourself that time, give yourself that honor and that space to do so. But let's get into it. Empowering and altering our ego, and the power that comes in being able to alter and being able to alter our ego. So what does this mean, and how do we actually use it to our benefit? Because first off, the ego, this thing that we carry, this thing that we have, and each of us have one. We can't be without it. You are not without an ego. And most people see the ego as this negative aspect. But I challenge you to think about this. Who are you without the ego? And did you ever give it thought that you could actually create your ego, or that your ego is actually created by you within your mind, and that you actually are the empowerer and the creator of your ego? This is up to you. This is your power. So to connect a bit from yesterday's topic and to get into our ego, I first want to explain this ego place inside of ourselves and why we can't be without our ego. Now, society has told us for our entire life how to live, right? It's either society down to our parents, whether it's can't do that, can't do this, here's the rules, here's the laws. Since society structure has been created, it's been telling us how to live. It's told our parents how to live, and it's told their parents' parents how to live. So their parents' grandparents' parents how to live. And we've become instilled with beliefs, ideas, thoughts, our outlooks in life, understanding, and the truths that we carry. More often or not, they were never our own, that we created ourselves. They've been handed down to us. They've been gifted to us, you could say. It's not been so much a gift, really. And we were trained to be somebody that we didn't really truly decide. And that's what we're doing here. We're uncovering who we are now, understanding ourselves better so we can foresee ourselves in the future and start to create that now. And we have to understand that a lot of who we are now was not created by us. And that this ego we carry, it comes from a line of truths from how we were told to act, how we were told to think, how we were told to feel, how we were told to speak and believe. Hence, yesterday I talked about this somebody training we go through. And basically, these are beliefs and agreements that we were handed down that became ingrained inside of us. They became a bit of who we are. And the ego was almost sort of like instilled into us like this microchip that was just put inside of you, and it became who you were. And you didn't, again, like I said yesterday, as a kid, you don't know any better. You just want to survive, and you want to be loved, you want to be incorporated into this family group. And we grew up in this way, from our parents to our grandparents and so on. And even it goes as far back as like our parents as grandparents and how they chased their dreams, the stories that they believed about themselves and if they were good enough. And going a bit deeper emotionally, it's given this feeling inside of us of who we are within this life. This ego has given us this feeling of who we are within this life. But the ego is a mind-created substance of energy. And that energy gets life through us, through our agreements and beliefs. And so if we give the ego energy, if that is the case, if we can wrap our heads around that, we give that. It's like Iron Man, he has that power cell here. And to give that energy is like our ego. If we can give that energy, we can then create our ego. And our ego can then create what we become. So if we can relook, or I challenge you to at least rethink or reevaluate the idea of the ego that we have. If this ego that we have now is not the person that we truly feel we are destined to be, if we know we want more, we know we want to uncover more greatness, we know that we deserve a greater sense of self, then let's revisit how we view the ego and how society has deemed the ego, because it's part of what we carry. The ego operates in a way, it's like our director. It's like in us directing the show. It's the director of our attention and our focus within our lives. And if we aren't in control of that, who's directing where we go? It's the old sense of ego. Now, a lot of times people get really caught up in the voices in their head, in the things that they are saying, especially as adults. This voice came from all these agreements that we subscribed to as a kid while we were growing up. These voices, we hear them and we think that's us talking. So as adults, this voice in our head, we think it's us, but it's not us. It's just a part of us. And when we talk about voice, I'm going to talk about this more in day 9, and I'm not going to get too deep into this voice now because I do discuss a bit about these voices in our head. But the idea is that these voices in our head, and the way that we were taught in our society, is that we were taught to operate from our brain. Our brain is everything. It is what controls the entire system of our structure, right? Our brain is the power operator. But what about the heart? Our whole lives we were told the brain to live from the mind and never to live from the heart. The heart brain. The heart carries consciousness. It carries thought. It carries passion and desires. It carries creativity. So why were we never taught to think from here? Well, because the mind can be controlled. The mind can be told what to do. It can be programmed. It can be wired in a specific way. And a lot of times it's been wired with these fears that we carry, our most troublesome worries. It's become our self-inflicted doubts. They were all born and they all live and thrive within our mind because that's how we were trained to be. That's how we're programmed to be. Again, you're not a robot. You're not a microprocessor, but there is programming that comes along the way in our journey. And this is the very place that we've been told and instilled since we were kids to operate and live from, was here. Why not here? Where passion lies, trust, compassion, love, courage. Why weren't we told to live from there? Why aren't we taught about that? So this is the exact thing that's keeping us from thriving. This. A lot of times it disinforms us. It doesn't allow us to seek out and passionately chase out the things that we'd like to live for and be a part of and become our greatest version. Now, we can master the mind, and we're going to talk about mastering the mind in day 9, but we have to first understand how this works in connection to our heart and which one can be creating the issues. Now, this issue with the ego is, if the ego is the director is creating the stories, it's creating the words, and it's creating the beliefs that we live by. And if right now these don't fit us, but we're hearing in our head that they do, that's who we are, this is our identity, this is going to continue to steer us further away from becoming fearless in our greatness, from being able to invoke a reality that we really want, because we're going to believe that this voice in my head is me and I don't deserve those things. This is who I am, I'm this way. Instead, the ego mind is what creates our fears. We need to remember that the ego mind creates our fears. And the mind, as I mentioned, is this director. It's this director of constructs and stories and unfortunately a lot of fear. The mind lives in the past or the present. It doesn't live from an elevated perspective. It lives within the human construct in our body. It always lives in past and present. It only knows survival. And I'm going to touch on that in a second. The brain only knows survival. It wants to keep us alive. Thank God we have it. It, always wants to keep us alive. But the fear that's inside of there cannot become our driver on this journey to proclaim our greatness. Fear can only be a passenger in this journey. Fear can only sit next to us, while our heart needs to be the passion of the passion of our drive. Because if fear is a passenger, we can connect with it, we can look at it, we can talk to it, we can associate with it, but we don't allow it to be the motivator. We can respect it. So to get us into higher states of personal success, accolades, conquest for our personal greatness, we have to start pushing fear to the side and letting it ride with us, not drive for us. Now, again, I don't want to touch too much on fear. I have another day on that in this 10-day course, but I want to talk about ego. Ego being the director, being in charge. It creates two main crippling factors: self-limiting behaviors and self-limiting beliefs, or our stories, beliefs and stories. We have an ego that creates beliefs and stories. Stories we're also going to talk about in another day, and I will say more about that. But now we're talking about how can we alter our ego, right? Okay, if we're connecting to this, if you're catching me, if you're up to speed with me, like, yeah, okay, well then how do I alter my ego? If I can take control of my ego and I can decide how I want to show up in the world for others, if I can realize it's my choice and that I choose it, then we have to remember this thing. Take this example. If someone tells you that they're afraid of public speaking, or they get angry when the clouds come out on a Tuesday, maybe Tuesday's their day off. Maybe they become overly emotional when they hear the word curtain. I don't know. Maybe they're a Sagittarius and they're just like, yeah, I'm a Sagittarius and this is just who I am. No, this is an identity that you chose. This is not who you are. This is who you're choosing to be. And I'm not saying you specifically, but this may be something to think about. This is a choice by you, and this choice can be changed if those things aren't serving you. You can be whatever you wish to be if you truly choose it. If it's already what you want to be, then that's amazing. That's perfect. But I would imagine if you're sitting here and you're still with me, you're still with us, then you're maybe like, yeah, there are some things that I don't agree with. So we can use that as our motivator. We can use that as our tool to get to where we want to be. But if those traits are a choice and those traits aren't getting you to where you want to be, it's time for a change, right? And we have to know when we look back at our story, if we can look back at our story, we can start to recreate our future story. We don't got to look back too far. It's just to find some understanding of who we are, how we are, why we are, and what we are, so we can start to become the person that we want to be. So how do we change that? How do we start to create a new baseline, a new foundation, as we talked about? How do we fix this? How do we heal this? You don't need to be fixed. You just need to heal a part of it. You need to understand it. And a lot of us get caught up in so much like, where do I start? Oh my God, it's too much. It's overwhelming. I don't even know where to go. Well, you have to take some action. You have to take some responsibility to just lean in. Maybe start trying to, how can I listen to my heart more? How can I function more from a space from my heart? There has to be more of a connection from the mind to the heart, and the heart leading a lot of the time, right? You have to drop down. Don't just let the mind always run. How can we act from here more often? The mind should be a servant of the heart. If the mind's serving the heart, we're moving in a positive, enlightened, loving, compassionate, joyful direction. I feel if we're not connecting from the heart to the brain first, and the brain to the heart second, you can cause yourself to go insane. always living up here. You literally can cause yourself to go insane. So don't operate from the mind all the time. The mind is good for thought of things, and we're going to touch on that too. But I just want to understand, I just want us to share, like, how can we understand how we can alter the ego to empower our heart to then master the mind so we can master our thought. If we don't have control of our thoughts, you'll never be able to master the mind. And mastering your mind is like mastering your life. The mind drums up our worries. It provides us with so many setbacks from our past. But it also creates fears and anxiety of our future. So it creates worries and regrets of our past and fears and anxiety of our future because it's always living in survival mode. Again, like I said, the fears and our worries cannot be our driver, only the passenger to be the fire for our motivation. You may hear also that people say you got to kill the ego. You need an ego death. This is like literally saying you have to get rid of your ego and lose it forever. I just have a question for you. How can that be? If that's the case, wouldn't that be like kind of like your ego speaking? But even if that's so, your ego's telling itself to kill itself also doesn't make sense, right? In my perspective, I feel, things I've studied and read, I feel our ego is this dense energy, this energetic attachment to our physical body, which then binds us to the earth. It keeps us solidified down on this planet. So the ego we can't escape. It keeps us attached to this world. And while we're in this world, if we were to lose the ego, poof, we would just like, star child, straight to the sky. So we're bonded to this ego. We're bonded to the ego that we create. And if we're bonded to it, why don't we make it our teammate? Why don't we have a partnership with our ego? I love the saying, I love to say this, is like, why don't you amigo your ego? Make it your friend. And from here, you can start the ego that you want to show up and show to the world. That ego then can become your most authentic self. When you become your most authentic self, you start to step into a greater sense of being. You start to step into greatness without even knowing it. You become so authentic. You start to shine so bright. It just happens. But when you're acting from ego, you're always trying to catch up and you don't really get to know who you are. So to become aware of our ego, we just need to take small shifts to start. Small shifts in our agreements and our beliefs that we're choosing to have. These are going to create the more powerful, more loving, more fearless self-derived ego that we'd like to carry. So like, if you want to have your ego be kind and loving, book reading, flower smelling, dog petting, then be it. Work on being that type of ego. If you want to be forgiving, empathetic, in tune with your emotions, you want to be sun loving, beach enjoying, then choose it. That's an ego that you're creating, you're empowering. But just know if your ego is rude, it lacks patience, it's short-tempered, it's road raging, it's job hating, it loves video gaming, you also choose that. That is the ego that you chose. We have to know that our ego is created from our agreements and our beliefs. And as the director of those thoughts and beliefs, that ego is directing our thoughts, our emotions, our desires, our actions. No one else determines the inner workings of us but us. The outer world is just happening. If we don't take time or even just take note of these things, we can't actually make change to invoke a reality or a future that we truly want. If we don't awaken to the facts of our ego and where its presence is within us, we will always play victim circumstances. We'll always, woe is me. Oh, pity party me. You are in control. The stories that you have can be dissolved to roadblocks, or the stories that you keep having will become your roadblocks. The changes don't need to be hard in your life to become life altering. We just need to start making some shifts in our awareness and in our behavior. If we have attention to what we're shifting, attention that we have some limits and some problems that we can start to rearrange, we can arrange our behavior and start creating beliefs and agreements that we choose to. So as we wrap up day 2, I want to wrap up day 2 again with another activity and exercise. And this is about, again, being really honest with yourself. Be as honest with yourself as possible. This is your journal. No one sees it. What I want you to do in this activity is think about some beliefs or agreements that you've gotten from your parents, from your upbringing, from your childcare, your primary caregiver. And this time, if you'd like, think of some simple ones. It could be sports, could be religion, could be food. Or if you want, go after some more difficult ones. Some stuff maybe like how I treat my partner, the type of job I carry, the type of job or career that I want, the material things that I chase to have in my life. Is there anything you ever feel you sometimes don't connect with or align with? Are there any things you sometimes don't feel so proud of? Is there anything about you specifically that you would like to work on or be better at? I challenge you to take a hard look at your own ego. What are some characteristics of yourself that you aren't so proud of? What are some of those things you actually would like to work on and possibly change? Where can you start to take back the ownership? Begin to develop the ego that you chose to have and who you want to be in this world for others. So for today, we're making a list of some things about ourselves, about our ego that we believe and hold to be true about who we are, but maybe are some things that we don't necessarily believe that we agreed to or chose. Are there any that we don't like and that we wish we could change? I ask you to be as honest as possible. Remember, it's your journal, it's your change, it's your growth. Strong foundations are built on trust, even within yourself. I'll see you back tomorrow for day 3. The power of our words, sorry, not the power of words, the magic of our words, and how our words invoke how we act and create in our life. Enjoy that activity. See everyone back tomorrow. Take care.